Hi everyone. Thank you for joining me for some more virtual vitamin Z today as we are bringing the Detroit Zoo to you. My name is Claire. I'm a curator of education with the Detroit Zoological Society, where we are celebrating and saving wildlife. So today, instead of telling you what type of animal we're going to be learning about, I'm going to give you a series of clues, and when you think you know what type of animal we're talking about, I want you to type it into the comment box. And I'll do my very best to try to grab that first person's name who guesses it correctly. But I am going to wait till I give all 5 clues. So before we start, I have a couple vocabulary words that I want to go over. And I want to show you these words because not only is it important for you to hear it in context when you're learning a new word, but it also helps to see it. So today we're going to talk about species survival plan. Sometimes we abbreviate it to an SSP. We're going to talk about populations, ecosystem, and conservation. So keep an ear out for those 4 different words as we go through our learning adventure today. All right, are you ready for your first clue? When you think you know what type of animal we're going to be talking about today, make sure you write it in the comment box. So these types of animals are really important for rodent control. Rodents are animals like mice and rats, and they have their own important place in the ecosystem. But when there's too many of them, there's an overpopulation, it becomes troublesome. So an ecosystem is all the plants and animals in the environment in a certain area. And when something comes out of balance, like there's too many rodents, they might start eating all the food that other animals need. Or if it's in a human area, they might start moving in. So all of a sudden you find them in your garage and in your shed and maybe even in your house. So there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. Oh, hey friends. This is awkward. No, you have a really important role in the ecosystem too, but when there's too many of you, it's just kind of problematic. So it's important to have that balance in place. Yikes. All right, so we know this animal is really important for rodent control. That's your first clue. If you think you know what type of animal we're talking about, type it up in the comment box. Ready for your second clue? This type of animal, this is an owl, relies on this as a source of food, along with other large birds. So again, it's that system of balance, right, in the ecosystem. Some animals it eats and some animals eat them. So second clue, this type of animal eats them. All right, third clue, this one's a doozy. So every year, the Detroit Zoological Society gets calls from people who have pets at home that they either are unable or unwilling to care for anymore. Maybe they didn't know how expensive it was to care for this animal. Maybe they didn't know how big it was going to get. Maybe the person who originally brought the animal into the house is no longer there. They moved out, they went to college, and all of a sudden there's this animal and they need to find something to do with this animal. So oftentimes they'll call the zoo. So on average, in the last 5 years, we get about 8 calls asking us to rehome this type of animal. And while it's a responsible thing to do, to talk to an animal expert to try to find a new home, in almost all cases, we can't rehome all those animals. So it's really important as a pet owner, before you bring a pet into your home, to know exactly what all of its care needs are. How long is it going to live? How big is it going to be? How expensive is it going to be to feed? Is the person who really wants this as part of your family going to be there to take care of it? All right, so that was your third clue. So let's recap really quick. It's rodent control. It eats mice and rats. Big birds like owls and other large birds eat it. And the zoo gets a lot of calls asking us to rehome them. Your next clue is a multimedia clue. Are you ready? So if you were this type of animal, this is your perspective on the world and how you would move through it. So here you are, moving through your day. This is your perspective on what the world looks like. Okay. So we've done our first 4 clues. There's one more, and you guys have some awesome guesses coming through, which I'm really excited about. So for the 5th clue, I started looking online for some pictures. I did an internet search, and I thought, you know what? I can do one better. So I contacted my friend Dante Fanilio, who is the director for the Amazon Center for Tropical Studies, and I've worked with him down in the Peruvian Amazon before on some field work. And I asked him to send me some close-up pictures of this animal's skin, which is not slimy, but it's very dry and smooth and has beautiful patterns. Look at these incredible patterns. And he sent me one more. There it is. All right. You all did a great job guessing. I'm so impressed. From what I could see, Chris L. was my first person to guess snake, which you are right if you guessed snake. So today we're talking about snakes. So you already learned a whole bunch about them from the facts that I shared in the clues, but there's something else that I want to tell you about them. Snakes are cold-blooded, so we're warm-blooded, which means we generate our own heat, and if we need to go outside in the extreme cold, we put on a coat and a hat and gloves, and it helps insulate us and keep that warmth inside our bodies so we can move around and be active. Snakes are cold-blooded, which means they rely on the environment for their warmth. So they rely on the sun, and they might go out and bask in it. So if you're out on a hike, or if you're driving down the road, you might find one out there. So the best thing you can do, drive around it, or just walk around it, or go back the way you came. Trust me, they don't want to bother you any more than you want to bother them. Just leave them be. They have to be out in the sun like that in order to keep warm and be able to function and move around. So I contacted the animal care staff back at the Detroit Zoo, and our curator of reptiles, Jeff, sent me a couple pictures and some updates on the reptiles, specifically the snakes. So this is the picture he sent me of the green tree python. And the green tree python is a people watcher. They like to sit right up in the front of the habitat and watch people go by. So they're probably wondering where all the guests have gone and are looking forward to having you back real soon. He also sent me this picture. This is the Catalina Island rattlesnake. And this is a rattleless rattlesnake. So rattlesnakes are known for that little shaker on the end, that telltale warning sign that you're too close. They're warning you to back up. But this one doesn't actually have a rattle on the end of it, but it's still considered a rattlesnake. This snake apparently usually spends a lot of time in the back of the habitat and has been spending a little bit more time recently exploring the entire place. Okay, so I told you a little bit about snakes. We got an update, and I want to tell you about a really cool project that the Detroit Zoological Society has been helping with for over 10 years. So there are 17 types of snakes in Michigan, and there's only one venomous type, and that's the Eastern Massasauga rattlers. And they don't really spend a lot of time around people because they're very shy. But we need to know how many of these snakes are out here because the Michigan Department of Natural Resources has listed them as a species of special concern. So our team has been working out in Southwest Michigan, and instead of using my globe today, like any good Michigander, I'm going to use my hand as my map. And this is Southwest Michigan down here, and they go down to the Edward Lowe Foundation. And Edward Lowe is famous for inventing kitty litter for all of you cat lovers out there. But their foundation is out in this huge wetland area, which is the perfect habitat for snakes. And wetlands, it's wet and kind of boggy, and there's small trees and shrubs and lots of grasses. So the team goes down there and they look for these Eastern Massasauga rattlesnakes. And they grab them up and very carefully they check them for a chip, just like our dogs and cats might have little transponders in them. So in case they ever get out of the house, a vet could actually help them get back home and know where their home address is. We put the same thing in the back of the Eastern Massasaugas, and they can scan them and know if they found this snake before, if it's a new one that they've never found. And this helps them know how big the population of Eastern Massasaugas is. So we know if it's a stable population, if it's growing, or if it's shrinking, and we can take action accordingly. So one of the times they're out there, they actually found this awesome juvenile Eastern Massasauga. Now, how do I know that it's a juvenile? Take a really close look. Do you see how big the grass is and those little pieces of wood chips and the weeds next to it? Those are really close observations I can make to know that this snake is only a couple inches long and is a brand new snake. And that's important to have babies out in the field because then we know the population is reproducing at some level and continuing to grow. If you're interested in learning more about the Eastern Massasaugas, our team does a blog, and if you go to the DetroitZoo.org, down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see all of our blogs. But they have 3 blogs on there specifically for the Eastern Massasaugas, and you can get notes from the field. So right from the people who are out there working with the Eastern Massasaugas and how that project is going. So a little light reading for later on. Okay. Now, I want to leave you with an activity. So this one's pretty simple. Over the weekend, I drew a snake, a snake outline, just like this, very simple, markers and paper, you don't need anything more. And then I drew another one, and my daughter who's in preschool did this one. So I drew the first 4 shapes, the diamonds in the circles in her favorite colors, orange and green, and she filled in the rest of the pattern. Then she asked if she could draw a heart on top of the snake's head, and I said, of course. Then I drew another one for my daughter who's in preschool. So this pattern's a little bit more complex. And again, I drew the first 4, and then my daughter filled in the rest of them. She told me afterwards that this reminded her of the pattern and colors of a snake that might belong in the movie Frozen, which was not the intention, but I could see where she got it from. All right, so if you draw your own snake, I would love to see it. Take a picture and upload it in the comments, and I'll be checking throughout the week to see all the amazing snake patterns that you do. And adults or even older kids, you could draw a snake pattern too, but maybe go online and find a close-up picture of what a snake pattern looks like and really take some close observations and make it. All right. So we covered a lot of stuff, but I wanted to hone in on some of the skills and concepts that we went over today. So we made predictions or educated guesses, or you did based on the clues that I gave you, and you all did a phenomenal job with your guesses. We made observations, both on the clues that I gave you, and also on that little snake photo and on some of the other photos that I shared, and those are important skills to be building. We also talked about patterns. Now patterns are a really important skill, and the ones that I showed might be really simple, but as kids are learning patterns, they need to know these. Patterns help us make sense of a chaotic world. They help us make assumptions and predictions, those educated guesses. And they also lead to really good critical thinking skills. So an expert at patterns now might be a world leader 10 years from now. We also talked about geometry, which is really important to know spatial reasoning and how shapes in our world fit together. And we talked a little bit about overpopulation. Oftentimes people have a big impact on ecosystems, and we can cause some animals to become overpopulated or other animals to disappear. So it's important to be knowledgeable about your impact on the ecosystem. So just to recap, we went through 5 amazing clues so we figure out that we were talking about snakes today. We talked a little bit more about snakes. We got an update from the animal care staff back at the Detroit Zoo who said the snakes are doing well. We also talked about the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake species survival plan and how we're making sure that these rattlesnakes continue to live and thrive in our state of Michigan. And I left you with a really cool snake activity that I would love to see what you come up with. So thanks for joining me today. Tune in tomorrow at 11 where my colleague Steven is going to give you a humane education activity and tip. So until then, stay safe and take care of each other.